Have you ever struggled with relationship between you and your father? And do you know of someone who, when you bring the subject of his dad, makes them uncomfortable? Well, I was once that person. Growing up with my dad was not easy, to say the least. In fact, I developed an antagonistic resentment and discontent with my dad as a teenager. This was something that I later on buried within my subconscious and was unaware until later on in my adult life. They just go back in the days of me growing up and watching how my dad treated my mom. Now, the fact that my dad, may have treated me the way I did not appreciate or enjoy actually was not my primary concern. Neither was that my primary problem. My one big problem with my dad was the way he treated my mother. Now, for some reason, it just did not sit well with me. The way he talked to her, the way he treated her, and the way that he sometimes abused her, even though I never saw it. I only heard it being said. In fact, the only closest memory I ever had was my mom one evening talking in the kitchen at the top of her voice. I was in the kitchen, I think, or outside. My dad trying to break in to abuse her and beat her up. But there were two men standing at the door preventing my dad. I'm not sure how old I was, may have been maybe 5 or 7. I still have the memory. And my dad hit those two guys at the door. I heard one of them say, Mr. Joseph, if you hit me again like this one more time, I will let you kill your wife. And for some reason, that did it. My dad just stopped. And that's the only memory I have. And so my mom tried to escape with me. Um, Now, I later on found out that this is because my dad thought I was not his legitimate son. That's in itself a huge part of my personal story and life that we can uncover some other time. So my dad thought I was not his legitimate son. And so my mom, being, willing to protect me against her own life, decided, and I remember this memory, a taxi stopped. My mom has put her things in, and I was in the car, I think with my brother. No, I was in the car and I was waving to my brother and younger sister who were outside. And my mom was, I don't know, one last thing she was picking up. And as she walked to the car, my dad just showed up from the farm. And he said to the driver, if you move an inch, you I will teach you a lesson. Now, my dad was trained as a special, force to, help eradicate, people who deal with, drugs and all of that. So the driver knew what was best for him. He uploaded everything. And my mom went bananas. She's like, what shit? But that didn't change a thing. The driver said, I am so sorry, please. And then I remember how we escaped. My mom planned it with some of her friends, and then one night, maybe my dad went out with his friends to go have fun, and that was the night my mom escaped with me. And so probably between 5 and 7 years old, I think, because I don't even remember how she got me out of bed, but I remember, being in the car and driving out and sleeping all the way, and took me back to her parents. Well, it turns out when I grew up, my grandparents, entering my teenage years, I became very uncontrollable to their testimony. I would take things that are not mine. I would break every protocol, you know, still stuff that were not mine. It was just bad. My mom could not handle it anymore. I overheard my mom once say that, she almost pushed me over a bridge. For some reason, I don't think she even remembers this event, and I never brought it to her memory. But for some reason, as a teenager, I heard her just in a conversation with a friend saying this. That was the last day I misbehaved myself. It's like that for me pulled the trigger. I never tried anything again because I thought, is that how painful it was for my mom? I don't want to be the one causing her pain. So for that for me, it just almost as it rearranged my life. And then I remember I was being brought back and so on, some reconciliation. My dad came by at that time. It was like my first clear memory of him. Um, he came by to talk to my mom's parent and yada yada and gone. And then suddenly we're back. My mom went back to my dad, but then she left me with a parent. And this is when things just go out of control for me. I could not handle life. It was just, I'm not sure. I think my grandparent also could not handle me. And they sent me to her and said, you know what, we cannot handle him. And my mom could not come. So they put me in a transportation, I think it was about 10, 12 hours as a teenager. Then I show up. My mom was so shocked when she saw me. And she literally saying, now, well, this thief has run away and come here. But my dad was excited to have me back. So that was refreshing. So now my mom was the one that was not excited with me. But of course, this is I want to really I'm giving you this background context to highlight the aspect that my challenge came was with my dad rather than my mom. Now, you would have thought all this comment with my mom would trigger something in me that said, I'm not happy with her. For some reason, it's always seemed like she's right, you know, because I didn't want to live that kind of a stubborn, responsive, teenage lifestyle. I got back when my dad welcomed me, and early in the morning, I remember this image. My dad invited me to his bedroom, took my hand and put it around his, like here I'm touching him here. And it was just delightfully looking at me and asking me how I was doing, how was the night. That is, I think for me, one of the images that seal the peace in my heart that, okay, I'm home here. This is my home. This is my dad. And any other story I've heard, that for me did not make sense. So I was fully in. And in fact, I don't know how even to put this into words. I just behaved myself. It's like I became, yeah, I wanted to be an adult. I wanted to be like my dad, go to the farm with him. And then um, I didn't realize that my dad and my mom have like this tension going on between the two of them. It was so intense, but my mom was a master of keeping it away from us. So it was impossible to even conceive that both of them had anything wrong going on. I think most of it protected us as children growing up. I don't know what my other brother, who was passed away now, knew, but it never crossed my mind. Then fast forward, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, I'm not sure how long. I came back from the farm. I think that by now I was about 14 or so, 14, I'm not sure, between 12 and 14, thereabout. I came back from the farm, and my neighbor's son told me how my dad had beat up my mom and that it was bad. The way he described the scenario, shock waves went through my body and anger rose up within me. It's like this a resolve to my what are you talking about? He said, oh my goodness, he went on describing, he was around the same age with me. And so I believe him, absolutely. And and then he was afraid because you don't want to talk. Any neighbor that say that to us, the children, will get in big trouble with my dad. So this is what happened. And when I heard that, the whole day I tried to observe my mom's behavior. She was a master. It's like I tried to observe. I just needed my mom to say one word, just as simple as today your dad beat me up, or today your dad was not happy with me. Just anything, just say one thing that triggers something. Zero, absolute zero from my mom's mouth. So I observe her. She's cooking, she's sharing the food. I'm serving quietly and furious inside. I look at my dad. Now, here's what really breaks the camel's back for me. That day, my other brother and I were in the farm, just around one of those holidays, like summer holidays. We're in the farm working. My dad had come to the farm, was so, want to impress him. So we did a lot of work in the cacao farm, where out of which we make, chocolate. So we've done this incredible. My other brother and I had a plan. We were going to work so fast, so well. And so when it came, he was quite blown away and impressed with what we've done so far. And so he praised us. And so we had a great time, great laugh, and great excitement. I feel so pumped up, fired up, like, yeah, we did it, we pulled it off. And Dad was quite surprised today. So then we came home. And then when I got home, I heard this horrendous news of how he abused my mom. That for me was what breaks the camel's back. I said to myself, that's it. When I grow older, I will teach him a lesson. Those were my words. Inside of me, they were as loud as speaking on a megaphone. When I grow older, I will teach him a lesson. I could not comprehend how he would do what my neighbor's son just described in a public show to my own mother, and then left her at home, walked to the farm, and had this incredible laughter, smile, cheerful interaction with us. It's like I could not settle that in my stomach for weeks. Nobody knew. Fast forward 3 years later, my dad passed away. By this time, I had zero memory of this vow. Now, think about this. I had zero memory of this ferocious vow. I don't know, it's 3, 4 years. My dad passed away. Um, Maybe it have been 5 years, I'm not sure. When he passed away, um, according to tradition, I had to join the men to bathe and dress him up for burial and all of these things. I was consistently being asked, are you strong? Are you strong? Be strong for others. So, you're in this stage of life where culturally you have to be strong for everybody to protect your mom. And once you mention the subject of my mom, everything else, I drop everything like, yes, I'm good. I'm strong. I'm good to go and all of that. And the entire memory, what he's done during this specific scenario was gone from my mind. And so he's buried, and man, things, my dreams, I always dreamt to become a medical doctor. That was just for me, that was one of the things that devastated me the most. So I'm sure it's probably because of this dream of becoming a medical doctor that was dashed the death of my father. At least that's what I thought back then. I think the impact of that, losing him, meant that I couldn't pursue my academic dream. I think that impact sort of supersede the revenge part of it. perhaps there's something to learn about these things is that um, we can naturally develop resilience if one impact is greater than the former. That if the current impact is greater than the former, it could somewhat appear as if we have developed resilient, but as you're about to find out, it's really not resilient, but rather a picture of the incredible abilities and capacity of our brain in our subconscious mind, which is to suppress information. And I'm sure you've heard about fight, flight, and froze. This is the froze part of it. It's to suppress information that the brain deems unhealthy to you. But it's not just about suppressing. It is it works so hard to provide the mechanism with which to inhibit the consistency of that information to be around your consciousness because of what it might trigger. You know, it might trigger a consistent level of adrenaline. This is why your emotion, the limbic brain, is linked to several mental illnesses today because of it being either overworked or underworked. You know, we'll come back to that in my subsequent broadcast. Studying this field of brain health and mental health has been one of the things I'm indebted to, and even my current research on neuropsychology and spirituality. So back to the story here. Um, the impact that my dad was suddenly gone, for me, at that stage of my life, I was I was devastated, like absolutely devastated. In fact, I ended up in the street because for my love, my mom, because I said to myself, there is no way my mom is going to. I knew she goes to the farm and bring things from the farm. I help to sell those things to her, provide for food in the house. So I said to myself, there is no way I'm going to allow her to carry the burden of trying to take care of all of us in the family, including my other brother. So to do what is best for her, I left. I left and went and took an adventure into the city. It's crazy, but some other factors there just that I not necessary for this point. And in the city, I found myself living there. Man, life became tough. I was in the street, and but I will not stop trying, you know, learning, trying, learning. I ended up sponsoring myself back to school, to the Cameroon Bible College when I got saved, radically got saved. And this is where my journey to forgiveness began. But how did I get to the place of forgiving my father? Well, it turns out I was invited by my neighbor. I had this incredible neighbor that kept giving me plates of food every day. She was a single woman. She also had a teenage boy, slightly younger than me. And this woman was so spiritual and religious that, you know, it was just, you look at her, she's a mother. You don't have to say twice. She was mom. You look at her, you just say mom. Okay. She gave me a plate of food every day. And so one day she invited me for a church program. Now, if you are used to the word church to me back then, you and I are going to have a big problem, okay? Just walk away. I don't want to hear church and all of that. Why? Because my dad goes to church. He went to church and I didn't see any difference. So stop it. Well, when this lady invited me for this church meeting, first off, she gave me a plate of food every day, guaranteed. So I have to play my cards right. I cannot say no to this lady because that is going to stop the flow of the plate of food that I desperately needed every day. Okay. Especially with what I was going through. So absolutely, I say absolutely yes. Okay. So I went that meeting and the preacher preached a very simple message. the emptiness of the heart that we try to fill it up with stuff, right? And then he named them. We try to fill it up with boyfriend, girlfriend, with money, with fame, with status, with certificate, with sex, with there was nothing he did not name. And at some point, it seems like he was describing my life. And then he caught me when he said, only Jesus can fill the emptiness of your heart. And I said, I've tried everything except that one. I went forward, friends. I actually do not remember the words he asked us to repeat in his prayer. I only remember sobbing, sobbing, sobbing. And notice, culturally, men don't cry. Even when my dad passed away, I could not cry. I wasn't allowed to cry. I had to be strong for others. It was the first time in my life that I was literally weeping and crying, like a well of emotion springing from within uncontrollably. In my mind, I'm wondering what is going on, but I couldn't stop myself. At the end of that prayer, something remarkable happened to me that I had to go and test it. I was walking back to my seat. I felt my body light. I thought to myself, huh, interesting. What happened? Literally light. So I was observing the door as he was saying the last prayer. I zapped through the door to go ahead of everybody to test this. Was my losing my mind or was it something real? So I started walking fast ahead of everybody in the street and just try to, my curiosity always pushes me to testing. I need to feel it, touch it, test it. So I started running in the street and I shouted, something like that. And it dawned on me, it's okay to shout in the street for the first time in my life. When that happened, friends, I realized the joy of freedom. Now, fast forward. I'm in a class. I'm taking a class. A lot of things happened in my life. I'm in a class, taking a class, and the lecturer began to teach. He was teaching about the story of Isaiah and Uzziah, and unrelated to anything about dad, myself. But then he began to open up some areas that suddenly it was almost like a movie scenario. Boom, right in front of me. I am back to that teenage years and time in my life where I vow when I grow up, I will teach him a lesson. Remember that part? Suddenly I was back there. And man, it was unreal, like literally unreal. I just began to weep. I was weeping uncontrollably. In fact, I wept for 3 hours. The class finished, they left and went for lunch. I was still on the floor. I actually didn't realize it until when I got up. I realized they've gone for lunch. It was after lunch. I've been on the floor for about 3 hours. I was weeping for two reasons. The first was remember the prayer that I felt my body like get set free, and I was so it put me in a trajectory of a relationship with God that I was so grateful because part of my other story is that I contemplated suicide to take my life. So it was at the verge of trying to commit suicide that this woman invited me. First, she started giving me food and invited me to church. You never know the impact a plate of food can do to a teenager. And that was me. I was at the verge of suicide. I've attempted it twice. So when this happened, for me, is that I found a meaning to be alive. Jesus gave me a meaning to be alive. I started dreaming again to be alive. Not an atom of a thought crossed my mind that I was holding my father who was dead, buried for years in unforgiveness. And so I was weeping, saying, but how can, in my mind, I was thinking, but how can God forgive me, love me, when I have this deep, ferocious, unforgiving, things in my heart about my dad. How? How can God forgive me and love me and all of that? And I've been living my life all these years after that event on when I got saved. I'm living my life as a Christian. How is that possible? How could I live with that in my heart and yet I did not know? The second reason I was weeping that day was, how do I forgive somebody who is dead and gone then? And as I wept and contemplated these things and counsel and advice, I recognized the fact that my dad was dead and gone did not stop me from making a choice to forgive him. The question is, do you want to forgive him now? My answer, absolutely. I want to forgive him. In fact, I do not want to hold this against him at all. I wish I was able to remember this. I would have done that in a sick bed. I would have told him that when I was there, before he passed away. I would have told him that. He never crossed my mind. And suddenly, I went on this journey of forgiving my dad, releasing, and also in this journey of discovering God's love beyond my inabilities. And I don't know where you are right now in your relationship with your dad. This has been so fundamental in helping me in my journey to become an executive leadership coach today. And I have used the same approaches to help, I don't even keep count, but innumerous number of leaders for that matter, because my coaching is, focus on leaders, to help leaders, most of them in their adult life, to forgive their parents, especially dad. And I've also worked with incredible leaders who had to forgive their mother. And there is an aspect of this that builds inherent confidence and self-worth. I discover key principles that I want you to pay attention to as you listen to my story today. First is that the confidence, freedom, and self-worth are all rooted in our childhood experiences during which they are stored up in our subconscious. Boldness, all right? Boldness is a byproduct of putting things back in perspective through forgiveness and letting go. Forgiveness and letting go is the most powerful tool you have in your arsenal to deal with bitterness, to deal with anger, to deal with pains, and every and any form of conflict in the past. But how to forgive is one of the greatest stumbling blocks that I've seen people get stuck with. And that's the joy that I derive walking people to really reconsider. And it's quite easy than you think, really, like really, really easy. And I've seen, leaders of different facets, different society, go back, restore relationship with their parent, and actually have the greatest and the best of time, allowing them into the lives of their children. And the parent now going like, wow, they could really enjoy being grandparent. It is possible. That's the story of my life. And that is one of the roots foundation for what I do and why I do what I do today as an executive leadership coach. And it's also, in most cases, has informed my understanding, my drive into the field of mental health, brain health, and neuropsychology. I invite you today to consider that forgiving your dad is actually in your best interest. Think about it this way. Whatever your dad has done to you, if you're listening, you have conflict with your mom, whatever they have done to you is what they have done. The emphasis is with what they have done to you. What you can do for yourself today through the principle of forgiveness is that you empower yourself to walk in freedom, confidence, and rediscover your self-worth. Here's a few things I would leave with you as I close this session, and you can reach out to be part of my masterclass. And or you can go straight to Udemy. I have, some of my teachings available there. My recent one being on biblical counseling and psychology. I think some of the principles there will literally empower you, move you forward. But here's what you can do. Just get a pen and a piece of paper and write down, what is it that happened between you and your dad? And do one thing. Say this: Father, I acknowledge that this has been very painful, but I choose to first repent that I have lived my life in anger and bitterness. And I ask your forgiveness, Lord Jesus, to help me and heal my heart. And I also choose to forgive my dad. Please help me walk in forgiveness and love towards my dad. Lord Jesus, bring healing to my heart and help me walk in freedom. In Jesus' name, I pray that God's peace dwell in your heart as you apply these principles that I know and I believe are capable of empowering you towards a greater and fulfilling future. And if you have further questions, reach out. And, coaching is one of those practical self-empowering tools that you can always develop at any stage in your life. The Lord bless you. From Kailua, aloha. And I will see you in my next broadcast.